Hello, guys. David Vose here. Beautiful day. Getting a late start, but it's just it's just a beautiful day. Hope you're having a wonderful day where you are, guys. I want to jump in here. I didn't think I'd be able to get a video today because I had so many things to do, but I just want to pop on here and talk about a subject that I want to start talking about a lot more. And these are some things that I'm kind of becoming more aware of, even though I've always kind of understood some of this. We've talked about this in the past, but I want to clarify a few things. A lot of people smoke, and there's a thing going around saying, well, tobacco is really not bad for you. In fact, there's a guy who's a doctor that says that nicotine cures all disease. And a claim that I guess that the government makes that says that nicotine cures disease. They're also saying it may cure the thingy. And I don't know whether that's true or not, whether nicotine could do that. I will tell you this. Your body has nicotine receptors, or some receptors that will accept nicotine. I believe they're called nicotine receptors. Of course, we have cannabinoid receptors. We have opioid receptors. That doesn't mean you should go out and do heroin. All right. Perhaps a number of plants in the plant kingdom have a thing called opium. It has this kind of substance, just as a lot of plants have tannins. I am certain that our body requires tannins. I believe the receptors in our body ate these kinds of things for thousands of years. Today, doctors, usually, shall we say, Bavarian doctors, which is what they all are, including that Dr. Berg that everybody loves, and I used to listen to him a lot too. And he's probably trying to give us some good tips. However, he's also one of these Bavarians, member very high up in the Scientology. Now, maybe a lot of these guys don't know what they're talking about and they're just giving their best advice. But I'm going to tell you some things that they're not telling you. And if you smoke or just are interested in health and some interesting things that will blow your mind and change your health if you were to follow these things, listen carefully. I believe the Lord is revealing some things that, to me, as I sit and contemplate these things, and I will look up on AI and verify these things before I tell you guys. But so opioids, nicotine, all of these things are substances found in plants, phytochemicals, polyphenols. I mean, look at that doctor that said, don't eat beans or tomatoes or other plants from the nightshade family or something. Makes you all scared and everything because you've heard of nightshade. And he says it's lectin. He said lectin is bad for you, and it's a pesticide, a natural pesticide. Well, he's a liar, and these kinds of guys should be literally taken off the air. Like, I'm all for free speech, but that is false information. Do you know that just about all plants have lectins in them? And lectin is not a pesticide. And, it's like tannins that are in a lot of the foods. These are phytochemicals. Mankind hasn't eaten any of these natural chemicals, plants, or very little of it, in so long. Because how long has it been since the native peoples were here and they ate wild acorns? Now, they processed it to get rid of some of the tannins. If we shouldn't eat lectins, then we can't even eat grain. And the Bible says that bread, which has a lot of grain in it, is the staff of life. So bread is processed. You go and you get the grains and you mill it, and then it's baked, soaked, and cooked. So acorns have to be processed. So do beans. Beans are usually cooked. You don't eat raw, dry beans. You got to cook them. So most kinds of beans are cooked and processed. So for those of you who say you should only eat raw food, Well, in the world that we live in, and unless you're able to go out and have a garden and change your environment and turn it into a paradise, which we will do soon, right now, the kinds of foods that people grow and cook have to be cooked. A lot of grains and beans and things like this have to be cooked. And therefore, soup is something that mankind has eaten for thousands of years. Remember Jacob and Esau? Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. So mankind has been eating bread and soup as their main diet. And they've been eating milk with cheese, and they've been eating eggs. And there are certainly those who will say you're not supposed to eat eggs. I even heard a very renowned guy who was supposed to be kind of an expert on herbs and things running around saying that eggs were chicken embryos. They're baby chickens. And that's just not true. The egg is food for the baby chicken. But there is no baby chicken in an egg because the mother's egg is not fertilized by the rooster. And even if it was fertilized, it's a sperm. It isn't started growing. It hasn't begun dividing its cells to become a chicken. So even if your egg, if you had a hen house where there's a rooster and the eggs are fertile, there's no chicken in the egg. And you're just eating the yolk and the white, which is food for the baby chicken as it grows and matures in the egg. It is food like milk for a cow, because cows are born, they have to drink milk. But the chicken is really quite mature when it hatches. It's got to eat and survive in that egg for some period of time. And it's got to eat, and it eats the yolk. That's food. It's not an embryo of a baby chicken. And these are lies that people spread. And some of these are supposed to be very intelligent people, and they probably know they're lying. But eggs are not baby chickens. They're not embryos of chickens. They are food. And we do eat food that is designed. The Lord made cows. They have 4 udders. Think about that. A woman has 2 breasts, and she usually has 1 kid, sometimes twins. A cow usually has 1 cow. Rarely they have twins, and yet they've got 4 udders. Well, part of that is because cows were bred and designed by our divine Father to provide milk for us, because the milk is something that humans have been utilizing in nature to live. You see, we don't live in paradise. We're not just eating fruit right now. We have to harvest grain, beans, vegetables, have a garden, and we make cheese with the milk, and we eat the chicken eggs, and we eat the honey from the bee. All of these are animal products, but this is the only way that human beings can eat without going completely into nature and buying some land or getting some hunk of area on this earth that you can turn it back to paradise, which would be difficult to do with the climate the way it is, the pollution in the air, and the resources that we have at this time. There is a curse that is on this earth at the time. The curse will be removed, yes, by the saints beginning to follow the truth, by loving and by living all things common, having these old ways brought back to become new. Yes, that's how it's going to happen. We got to start doing it. But if you're all alone somewhere and you're just trying to figure out what to eat today, and you haven't got a garden yet, you're going to have to process these grains if you're going to eat them. And you're going to have to eat milk and cheese, because the only way to get your omega-3s and the good diet and the balanced protein sometimes is to eat eggs. And that's just a fact. And in this ecology that we live in, it's perfectly appropriate to eat eggs and milk and cheese and various things. But we should not eat animal flesh. That is true. And I don't know why they're getting away with saying these kinds of things. Jesus said that eggs are a perfect food. And indeed, they have the perfect balanced cholesterol that the body needs, omega-3. They have the other omega-6. They have the perfectly balanced proteins with all the amino acids. It is indeed a perfect food. And this is why you see people in China, when they eat their rice, which doesn't have enough vitamins and minerals, and they don't have a lot of vegetables, they will always use an egg and they'll mix it in with their rice or their noodles because they know they need a balanced meal. So if we're not to eat lectins, then we're kind of screwed because just about all the plants have these phytochemicals. Plants are not bad for you. Some of them need to be processed. However, today I want to talk about health in a way that you've never heard it before. And it's going to be important that we know what we've already talked about. We got to know that we need to eat plants. We need sometimes to process plants. And this is how we can eat them. However, there are plants that don't need to be processed. And this is things like fruits and nuts. And if you could just live on fruits and nuts and seeds and wild plants and maybe watercress and wild sorrel and mint and, just stuff that you could grow, squash, onions, all of these things can be eaten raw. And you can have salads, and you can take the nuts and you can grind it up, and you don't even have to cook it to make a cookie. You can put dates with it and make a sweet cookie. The Lord provided for our needs. We do have a sweet tooth, all of us. And there's a lot of sweet things in nature. There's nothing wrong with sugar if you're getting it in nature, in plants. But I want to talk about the lungs. Do you know that we don't really breathe with our lungs? I mean, part of the process of breathing, of course, has to do with the lungs. But the lungs are more or less a bag that fills up with air when you breathe in. And then when you breathe out, you're breathing not the air you just breathed in. The air that you breathe in goes right into the walls of the lining of the lungs and goes into the bloodstream and provides your body with air. So your blood is what allows you to breathe. Your arteries and veins go throughout your entire body, and that blood is made up of oxygen, and the liver adds other things into the bloodstream that provides nutrients and building blocks for your body to build and grow. But the oxygen that goes through your bloodstream, a lot of it goes to your brain. The brain requires more oxygen than any other part of your body. And so you hear about this blood-brain barrier. Well, anything gets in your blood's going to get into your brain. And imagine why you need this oxygen for a minute. When you're going up a hill, you're climbing a mountain, you think, why is this so hard for me to climb up a mountain? Say you weigh 130 pounds and you're going up this mountain. You make 2 or 3 steps in an upward direction and you immediately start to feel tired. Start breathing heavier. As you go up further, you're breathing even heavier. Halfway up, if you're not in good health, you may have to stop and cough a little bit and get some air. Why are you losing air as you're going up the mountain? Because in order to hoist 130 pounds, you may weigh even more than that. Some of us do. In order to hoist those pounds up that mountain, it requires a great deal of energy. Now imagine a little motor that you might use to open a sliding glass door or something. That would not be strong enough to get you up that hill. That door is not 130 pounds. It requires a great deal of energy expenditure to run the pump that's in your body. The muscles will, with that energy and the little explosions, it's burning energy, it causes the muscles to contract and to expand. And this is what causes a pull on the ligaments, and you move your arms up and down. Your body it seems like it's just a bunch of jelly, mass and fluids and flesh and so forth. Doesn't look like, there's no pulleys and chains and bearings. And there isn't. And I've mentioned that before. You don't need to think about your body as something that wears out. There's no pulley or gear or anything that's going to wear out. And every surface and thing that's in your body repairs itself all the time, every day, We have no need to ever die. And I will tell you by the end of this video what causes actual death. I mean, there's several things, but what ends up killing people as they get old is a lack of exercise. And I will explain this because it has to do with getting air into your brain and into your body, into your organs. So if you are climbing the mountain, you're going to have more energy, more explosions, more tightening, expanding, contractions, muscles being forced to work very hard. Now, if they're doing this, they're going to require fuel. This is why when you run a marathon, people drink Gatorade or something. Well, you shouldn't do that. I mean, I wouldn't drink any modern soda or Gatorade or anything like that. Milk or mineral water is better. Milk has all the minerals, so you can properly hydrate, or mineral water. But, you know, even something like juice that has a little sugar can help you because you're burning sugar. That's what's going on. So people who say you don't need sugar, well, you probably wouldn't need sugar if you never really worked or exercised, because the body can burn fat, but it takes a little longer to do that, different process. And you can live on fat. Your mind likes sugar, but it can burn fat. However, if you're working like in a sawmill, like my dad did, or you're working in a mine, or you're just doing marathons, or you've got to build houses, even if you're doing laundry, or you're walking around as a security guard, you're walking around. If you're going to get up and exert your body, then it's going to require energy. Energy isn't just there spontaneously. That's why we eat, and that's why we need carbohydrates. If you're doing things like running and climbing mountains and working a 9 to 5, you need sugar to burn. Or else, now, if you don't have the sugar, you may breathe and get tired. You may breathe a little heavy, you may feel a little tired, and you want to go to sleep to repair the damage that was done. But you can get by without carbohydrates. You don't need a lot of them, and you certainly don't need processed white sugar and white flour. Those are poisons, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about fruit and vegetables. We need the carbohydrates. Just think of the word itself. It's a carbohydrate. So if you're burning energy, you're going to release carbon dioxide. Your car releases carbon monoxide, but your body releases dioxide. But when you do that, you're burning the chain link in the cell. You're moving energy through the layers of the elements through the cell. It starts with oxygen. And once you're done with that, you need to replace it with hydration, which is water, hydrogen, right? Hydro, and the minerals. It needs to be replaced, all the minerals. Because when the energy goes through, flows, a flow of electricity and energy, the hydration needs to be replaced, which is basically water. So carbohydrates are for hydration, not just sugar. Sugar is what allows the process to be hydrated. Sugar is what the fuel is, but you need the oxygen to burn. But we'll talk more about this as we go. You've got to have carbohydrates, friend. You just got to. Now, that's part of it. You need to burn sugar, glucose. But in order to burn that fuel, one needs oxygen. Oxygen is required to get a fire going. If you have a fire and you start a fire and you shut it down and turn down the damper and you just smother it with no air, the fire goes out. You cannot burn without oxygen. So even if you've got carbohydrates, you ate plenty of food, had breakfast, and you start going up the mountain, you got plenty of fuel to burn, but you have no oxygen, you are not going to be able to burn that, and you're going to start breathing really heavy, trying to get more oxygen. And if you're not in good health and you don't have muscle, because you see, When you build muscle, it looks like the muscle expands and tightens. What are you doing? You're causing there to be veins, arteries, little varicose-like veins that go throughout your muscle. And that is there to provide blood. Now, it's not just there to provide blood in the sense of proteins and building blocks to build your muscle. It's there to provide oxygen to burn so that you can burn the fuel. And the fuel then is stuff like proteins and things that then are broken down and made into new muscle, and you're repairing things, tissues and stuff. But without the oxygen, you're done. Now, let me give you an idea of just how important the oxygen is compared to the other proteins and other things. The world that we live in is, let's just put a figure. I don't know the exact figure. I don't think anyone does. But I'm going to say it's about 90% oxygen, hydrogen, helium, oxygen, those airy substances. There's even quite a bit of nitrogen and things. But oxygen, or air, shall we say, it has a few other little chemicals in it. Air is the most, well, oxygen itself is hydrogen. Now, that's probably one of the reasons why oxygen is necessary for burning things or getting things lit to keep a fire going, because there's hydrogen that burns. The air or the oxygen that's in the hydrogen fuels the hydrogen. So H2O means there's 1 part hydrogen, 2 parts oxygen. So to burn the hydrogen, you need the oxygen. It's a chain reaction. But remember, this is 90% of what you've got going on in your body, just air. After that, you start going down. Very high up the totem pole is sodium chloride and these kinds of things. You need quite a bit of this, and potassium, sulfur, phosphorus, calcium. These are going down the list. You have trace amounts of elements like uranium and tin and gold and lead and all these metals. But there is a elemental chart, you see. We call it the elemental because it's from El. And all the elements are the sons of El. So as above, so below. We're all children of El, and El is all, right? It's all. But what is El made of? Well, it's got lots of layers. And the flow of energy is not really anything flowing, although water does flow, so that's a good illustration. But it's not necessarily water flowing. It's energy vibrating and moving. Even water doesn't actually flow. The water molecules are in the water, or the little charged vortices that we today call particles. But those little charged vortices are little spinning vortices that will stay spinning, and they will unite with other spinning vortices that will attract them. And therefore, you're not really flowing, but you're bringing air down into hard things. You're accumulating electrons. And so all the way from hydrogen, helium, oxygen, you start adding electrons, you're making things more dense and heavy. And this is why things that are very heavy have a lot of electrons, and this is electricity or charge. What is charged is just like the sky. At darkness, it's not charged. It's negative. And you can even go in the negative so that you pull energy. The moon is a negative light and it pulls energy. The sun is a positive light and it brings charge. It makes life. Life is this energy, you see. So it has to start the process through a chain link. It's got to go from oxygen or air, fire, water, and earth. Earth then is the parts of this chain that are solid, that are heavy. And mass is literally desire, because all of this is mind. It's just mind. It's L. All of it is light. All of it is mind. But as mind begins to contemplate, it makes images, more complex thought. And the more things you think of is a direct result of your desire. If you see something, it causes your attention to go to that. If you believe it or think it, you see a picture, but it's transient. It doesn't come into the physical. But if you lust or fear it, it will make itself known in the physical. It'll be a monster if it's something you fear. If it is something you believe or trust or just know and like and choose, it will manifest and it will be a positive thing. In other words, you're putting charge. Fear or belief or desire, wanting, is what causes what we call gravity. The principle that they're talking about when they're talking about gravity, which contracts and brings things down, and it makes mass. Mass is something that has weight, and the stronger the mass, the more weight. And what that is more electrons, even though there are no little particles called electrons, but it's more charge. It's more positive. And it simply is a positive thing called hope, faith, love. We're creating it with mind. The things we think about, the things we're happy about, the things we want are created in our world. But it's balanced by things that we're afraid of, because we don't want to do that. So we've got to be afraid of that. Not terrified, because we know the answer. We don't have to have that. We've got the answer. We've got love. But if we didn't know we had the love, we didn't know that we're the creator, that we are the divine, that Christ is in us, then we might be afraid. And that is a lack. But we shall not lack. We shall not want. We will trust in his name. And that name is in us. He gave it to us. It is with us because we are his brothers and sisters. And so we do it all in his name because we carry his name with us. We don't need to speak it. We only need to believe. So desire is the greatest force that causes mass and brings what we desire into materiality. So the harder substances are the physical, the material things. Now, they have to go away. We don't think about one thing all the time. We change our focus. What we were thinking about before that had some substance and solidity, as soon as we turn our attention away from it, we don't believe in that boogeyman no more. We concentrate on something good. We say unto that mountain, be you moved, and it shall be moved, or that tree be plucked up and thrown into the sea, and it will, because it's with our command that everything is done. We command the mountains. We command the physical, the weightier, the heavy, because the heavy is a product of our wish or our command. Fear, though, which is a lack of knowledge or ignorance because you don't know what's going on, now we're not just saying, I know that's bad and I'm staying away from it, but now we're saying, I'm afraid of that. I don't know that I can stay away from that. I don't know that I have that power. I'm going to get sucked in by the current. I'm going to go and get eaten by a monster. And now you're afraid of monsters. Your attention is all on monsters, and all you can see and picture and materialize is monsters. And it will make its presence known in your life. But now let's take it into the body and diet. So in order for your body to continue being alive, it needs to repair, because you cannot have a body that does not repair itself. Even immortal bodies need to repair themselves. Jesus had a body of flesh and bones, and it isn't just you don't ever have to eat again, but we won't have to eat these carnal things so that our body is carnal, weighted, earthly. We cannot fly. We cannot just go and come where we want, but we're stuck on the earth in this mundane situation with monsters and flesh-eating animals, because our minds are manifesting this physical thing. And therefore, in order to keep this body alive, one must eat flesh. And the covenant of the old law was that we would eat meat and murder an animal, and we would get their life of the animal, a life for a life, and we could live. But however, even though it is true, what is living by that means is your physical carnal flesh, the blood. And you are mortal, and you have to keep eating other animals, and a dog eat dog, and a world of vengeance and hate, and a material, carnal, weighty, lustful body that is constantly dying and requires constant food. But in that situation, you're literally having to eat physical things and replenish your physical body. However, there is a better way, a more efficient way. You've heard of breatharians or fruitarians. Now, human beings cannot be a breatharian at this moment. One could do it and can do it. But at this time, we've got to wean ourselves off from flesh. And then we will live much longer. But until we get to the place where we no longer have such carnal thoughts that make our bodies so heavy and lustful and fearful, and the catch-22 is that we're then killing other animals, they're afraid, and we're eating that fear, and we're living on this fear, on this death. And our bodies then will go out of balance because you will then have to die. If you're going to eat something else, that something is going to die in order for you to live. And somewhere along the line, somebody else is going to come along and eat you. And then you're going to have to die. And you say, well, why did the Lord allow this evil government, this killing people and putting them in prison, and all this pain, suffering, war? Well, because we chose this life. We made the agreement. We said, a life for a life. We said, this we will do. And we got married to the angry deity who put us under slavery. And we said, if we don't do everything you say, we will die. And this is the situation we're in. Our covenant is literally based on a covenant that we make by eating animals. And listen to me, it does not mean that you go to a temple and sacrifice a lamb. A lot of you say, oh, that's barbaric. I would never do that. Well, if you eat meat, you're partaking of the covenant of Yahweh. James, the leader of the Christian church after Christ died, did not eat meat. And you can look it up. He ate only seeds and nuts and berries and things. John the Baptist did not drink wine, neither did Jesus, even though it says he did, and the sacrament says it has wine. But as we said before, it's just a different kind of wine. He changed the water into a new kind of wine, a better kind of wine, and it's not really wine. They just called it that. It's the sacrament. And it is an herb that has these phytochemicals that we need that give us life. They subsisted, Christ subsisted and changed the molecular structure of his body by eating the sacrament. You see, they ate their bread from house to house and had all things common. It does not say they eat meat, ever. They did eat fish as a ceremonial thing on certain holidays to show that our covenant is not with blood, or because under the law, you couldn't use a fish or a bird to make atonement for your sins, because they were a different kind of creature, closer to plant life. Now, there will come a time when we won't eat herbs or anything else, because the herbs are actually for the healing of the body. Once we're completely well, we won't even need that. We'll only eat the fruit of the garden. Now, the fruit is not part of the tree. It falls off, and we're not killing anything. It's simply energy that we're sharing with everything. So in a perfect condition, we're going to finally get to a place where love itself will sustain us, sharing the vibrations through higher means, not through eating, but through loving, holding, speaking, communicating, breathing, but not necessarily through eating. We'll talk about that more. This is probably going to be, I'm already halfway through this video today. I haven't gotten anywhere near what I wanted to tell you about. We're going to talk about the lungs, and we're talking about diet. So to get to the lungs, we need to understand how important air is. 90% of everything is air. Maybe that last 10% has everything else. But in that 10%, fluid or water is going to be another 90% of that 10%. So this is why we need air all the time. And it's not getting into our brain and our muscles from our lungs, but from our bloodstream. And if our bloodstream is not getting air, it's getting poison. If you don't have that, what you need, 90% of what you are, you will die very soon. This is why when people get old and they don't have muscle, which is arteries to get the air to the body so that it can burn and ignite and replenish the proteins and the thing, your body's not healing. It's not going to repair itself if you don't have plenty of air. If you're not getting exercise, you don't have any capillaries, you don't have any channels for that air to get to your muscle and to your organs, and your organs become depleted, and your brain, which uses more air than anything else, if it's depleted, you will be unable to think clearly. You will be dizzy. You will have headaches. You will literally be shutting, because the brain needs to operate so it can be the command central for the rest of the body. And if it's not functioning, it's not going to be commanding things. They talk about the pineal gland calcifying. Well, buddy, your problems are way worse than that, right? Yes, your pineal gland can calcify, and this means less melatonin is distributed. Melatonin is circadian rhythms. You need sleep, but it's also how you hear, you smell. Without enough melatonin, you can't taste as well. You can't be happy. You can't enjoy. It's what is the precursor for all other hormones that give you sensation and life itself and being. So if you see somebody that's 80 years old, 500 pounds, laying on a hospital bed, and they haven't walked in weeks and months, and now they're in this dying condition, the doctors say, well, they're old, they're dying, there's nothing we can do. The reason they got there is because poisons, food, diet, but they didn't get enough water, they didn't have a flowing bowel movements, they were putrefying in their gut, ruining their gut lining, all of that we've talked about in the past. But even more than all of that, they weren't getting air. If you don't have air, which is more important than anything else, fluid, we talked about water, but let's talk about air. If you don't get enough air, you're done. And so if you've been lying around and your body, your muscles atrophied, then there's no muscle, meaning there's no little veins carrying oxygen, not just to your flesh. So you can't rebuild your legs, but you can't rebuild your brain. That goes right into your bloodstream, right into your brain. A lot of that goes to your brain. That's command central. You're not getting oxygen. You're going to die. You're going to suffocate. You can't live that way. And you're lying there and they're trying to, why do you think the first thing they do is put you on oxygen? When you're really sick, they put you on oxygen. That can bring you back because your body needs oxygen. That can bring it back to the brain and start the brain to function a little bit more. But once they get that person awake, they need to stop all poisons and get them up walking. And if they're 400 pounds, they need to do an enema to moisten what's in their stomach and get it flowing again, because the liver is clogged and putrefied and poisons are going right into your bloodstream. There's no, they can feed that person antibiotics, keep them alive for a while, but then eventually your body can't do any more of that. So you're killing yourself by doing that. What's more important is you should eat something like garlic or oregano oil or something like this, onions, peppers, black pepper, all the things, vital chemicals and nutrients that are good, soups, bone broth. You need to eat immediately, get up and walk. If you cannot move, then somebody needs to help you move your leg and get it moving. And once you get enough strength that you can stand up, you need to stand up. And if you're going to stand up for 5 minutes, then sit back down. But the next day you need to stand up for 10. You need to start walking or you're going to die. You got to have blood veins, which is what is made when you walk, when you exercise. You're breaking down muscle so that these little veins can get in there and start putting air and building more muscle. But it's also going to all your organs, like your liver, your pancreas, your gut. Everything has got to have air, or else it will not function. Now, let me just tell you how difficult then it would be to stay healthy if you were a smoker. And this means even regular tobacco that is chemical free. Because tobacco itself, when you smoke it, any smoke, is carbon monoxide. Now, our body excretes carbon dioxide, but not monoxide. Monoxide is absolute, complete, pure poison. Stand next to a fire and breathe it in. You start coughing, you walk away, and you've got to recover. All right? Smoking, even cigarettes, into your mouth, even if they're pure tobacco, that smoke is carbon monoxide, and it goes straight into your bloodstream and goes into your brain. It will start shutting your brain down. You get dizzy. Sometimes if you quit, you'll get headaches. You're poisoning your bloodstream, not just your brain, but your kidneys, your liver, your pancreas, every part of your body, your toes, your limbs. If you don't have arteries going into your parts of your body and little veins going into your muscles that go into the cells that burn energy, glucose, and uses the chain of the elements to flow that life force called energy, you're going to die. You need that energy or you can't get up. And to cause that energy to go, you got to have the oxygen or you're smothering that flame. The flame will not burn. I mean, yeah, you've got to have minerals. People don't even drink mineral water. They don't eat real food. So yeah, you got to have all the minerals and the nutrients. Obviously. But even if you had all the nutrients, if you're smoking, you're literally putting carbon monoxide in your bloodstream, and it's going to your brain and to your body and your muscles, and it will shut down the production of muscle growth, and you will slowly dwindle away. People who smoke have spindly little legs. They cannot rebuild muscle anymore. In order to live long, in order to live even an average lifespan, you must stop smoking any kind of smoke. Pot smoke, any kind. I only partake of cannabinoids by eating it, but you should never smoke it. Smoke anything. You should never smoke anything. It is literally something that isn't minor. You're damaging the cilia in your lungs. The air that you breathe in should be clean and pure air. What you want is H2O. You do not want any contaminants in that air at all. Now imagine how much contamination is in smoke. It's not H2O. It's mostly some kind of monoxide, right? Carbon monoxide. It's what is left over when you burn wood and other substances. So it is absolutely crucial that you never smoke anything. Now imagine if smoking is so bad for your health. And I'm not talking about causing cancer because, of the radiation or anything. No, people died of lung cancer and stuff like that years ago because of the tar. And they started off with cigarettes that had asbestos filters. And that was instant. You died within a few years. But today they've got these chemical free, people are smoking them. I even looked into that. But the problem with it is, even if the nicotine was good for you, because like I say, a lot of plants have these chemicals. They're good for you. We eat them, But maybe even put them in, let them melt in the oil and rub them on us, anointing liquids and things. But we shouldn't smoke it. Now, if that's true, then here is something you need to think about. If you live in the city and you live in an area where, as all cities do, there are factories, there is pollution. When I was a kid, I went to Los Angeles as a kid to go visit my grandma, and you couldn't see the Hollywood sign most any day. Some days you couldn't see 2 car lengths ahead of you. It was so much smog. They called it smog. Well, I don't know what year they started cleaning it up by requiring this and that and filters on the factory chimneys and certain EPA guidelines and so forth. And now when you go to Los Angeles, you can see the Hollywood sign, but it's still fuzzy. You could still see quite a bit of pollution, especially in a lot of cities. But it's a little trick that they played on this, because it's a little bit like they say, well, the sunshine could cause radiation, cancer, UV, not good for you to lay out there too long. You burn, obviously. You lay in front of the sun, it's going to burn you. Well, that's not good. You don't want to be burned. So the Lord made it so that when you started getting burned, it hurt and you got out of the sun. Worked perfectly. But now they give you lotion that stops you from burning, so you can stay out in the sun all day. Here's the problem. You're still getting the UV light under the skin and causing cancer. So if you use sun lotion, you're going to get cancer. You should not be out in the sun longer than what it takes to tan your body. And if you go out every day a little bit, your body gets more melatonin and tan, and you don't burn. And you can stay out a lot longer. But you should not use creams like that. Same thing is going on with the pollution. They're saying, look, the air looks better, right? We cleaned up the dirt, the grayness, the darkness that's in the air. Now the only thing floating around in the air is things you can't see. Okay, well, in those 50 years since when I was a kid, I'll bet you there's way worse toxins in the air now. Look at the airplanes going by. People call them chemtrails. Well, they're probably contrails. And what's that mean? It means that the engine, the fuel of the jet is causing condensation out the backside. And this is carbon monoxide. And it's being spread all over the world. And when you live in areas where there are cities, you're breathing car monoxide. Think about living in a city with the cars running everywhere. Carbon monoxide, planes in the sky, flying everywhere, carbon monoxide, and whatever other chemicals there might be, and additives in the fuels that's floating around in the air. But you see, you don't see it, so you feel, I'm fine. Whatever's in that air, let's say that it's supposed to be 100% H2O. A little bit of hydrogen and oxygen. That's what you're supposed to breathe. Let's say that there's 10% of that air that you're now breathing that is full of carbon monoxide and chemicals and other crazy chemicals that we don't even know about, right? There's got to be, think about all the chemicals they put in the soil that's got to be rising up out of the ground, and chemicals they put in the water, and chemicals that they, just all the chemicals. Your air, if you're living in a city, could be, I don't know what the percent would be. I'll have to look that up, but I don't know that AI would even tell you. But I'll guarantee you that you're getting a large percent of poisons in the air. And what it's doing is it's killing the little cilia in your lungs. And your lung can't filter that out. It's too much. It's going in your bloodstream, and it's poisoning your mind and your body, and you're becoming deathly ill. You're walking around in a daze. Your body's not burning efficiently, so your muscles are not growing. You don't have the body that the Lord intended for you. A beautiful body. Most people, if they ate right, lived right, did right, they'd have beautiful bodies. No blemishes. Their skin would be completely flawless. Their hair would grow, their nails, everything. Listen, I've lived my entire life without doing or practicing the things that I'm telling you about. I'm only now beginning to realize that we've got to do this and fully understanding some of the things that we have not been able to understand. And I'm sharing it with you. If you smoke, you are damaging permanently, because many of those Cecilia, I personally believe that if you quit all the bad things, eventually your body would heal. Everything they say wouldn't heal probably would. I think you could get more neurons if you're losing neurons. They say you can't. Now they're saying maybe you can. How about stem cells? I think you can have stem cell production when you get older, but you have to have a good liver. And if you're in a city, you can't, because you're breathing in toxins into your bloodstream. You say, well, this is a little bit, your lungs will take care of it, just like my liver's taking care of all these poisons, right? Your liver takes care of the poisons. You can drink alcohol. It's normal to drink alcohol. But when you drink to excess, your liver's working overtime. And now, on top of that, you've eaten pizza, which is not digestible, and it's all being putrefied in your gut and poisoning, and you're getting infection. You will either have an appendicitis attack, you'll have a poor liver, your gallbladder will have to be removed, or your little spindly legs won't grow, or you'll be tired, brain fog. All of this is caused from eating poisons that don't digest, not enough water in your gut. But we're not talking about that side of it. That's a huge problem that I said the other day in some of the videos we were talking about, is like one of the biggest problems we have with our health. Drinking enough water and eating fruits and vegetables and getting your bowel movements going. But which then restores the gut lining and the bacteria and all the things that's in your gut. But right now what we're talking about is not the fluids and the solids, the air. And if you're smoking, you're damaging your lungs, and you're directly putting carbon monoxide in your bloodstream and in your brain. And you're damaging your brain, which then inhibits your brain from functioning, having sleep. Without sleep, you don't repair your body. It stops and calcifies pineal, pituitary. You don't have the hormones. You're not happy. Not only that, but you're not eating any phytochemicals that are in nature that you need, right? And if you were taking them, you're doing it with smoking or some other way that's not healthy. So, some of you said, well, I'd like to leave the city, Dave, but I haven't got the time right now or the money. We'll do it tomorrow. The problem is it's a sin to live in the city. We were commanded to have all things common, to share our things with others, and to get out of Babylon, which means this world. And if we don't do it, we're going to share with her in a sense and partake of her plagues. And these are part of the plagues that I'm talking about here today. And I want to do another video or two on this because we need to really understand what's really going on. So those of you who think that, well, nicotine's good for you, so I'm going to eat or smoke cigarettes, you're killing yourself. At this point, if you stop cigarettes, you might feel worse for weeks because you still got to clean it all up and repair your body. Now, if you're in the city and you smoke, you're done. You're not going to live long. Autoimmune deficiency, diseases, all these things, it's all caused by these poisons and not any air. One of the things, even if you're living in the country and you don't smoke, but you don't go out and hike and you don't exercise, that's what gets the veins going into the flesh and building muscle. And that's what, muscle's not just there for you to look sexy. Muscle's there for you to move and breathe and live. Your lungs and your heart and everything's a muscle. Your legs, you can't walk without muscle. You say, I got enough muscle to walk. Yeah, but do you walk, climb mountains? Do you do all that? Well, I don't need to. I work in an office, Dave. Well, that's the point. You're dying. You're living in a prison. You got to get outside and walk, get muscle. And the muscle means more than just good looks or I can walk. It means you can breathe. It means you can burn energy and replace the muscle tissue. It means that you can have the perfect body with no blemishes. It means that you're not dying. And I guarantee that if a person who was 90 years old, 400 pounds, came into a hospital, there's a way that you could start feeding them correctly, get them exercising. Maybe for a while you will have to give them air, oxygen through the nose because they just about killed themselves. It may not be possible to get back from that point, but I think it might certainly be possible. I've heard of stories where people in that condition immediately started eating right, fasting. Do you know what the word quarantine means? It means fasting. This word quarantine, you can see it has the word quar, like quarter. So it has something to do with 4. Well, it's 40. The word is 40 days. That's the time that Moses, Elijah, and Jesus fasted. It was quarantine. And so when a person gets sick, they used to put them in quarantine. Today we think that they got a virus, right? And then we might catch it. So they're in quarantine so we don't get sick. Ha! That's not what it ever meant. It meant that if you're that sick, you need to go into quarantine. That means you need to stop eating solid food for 40 days and 40 nights. It'll help if you just do 30 or even 21 days. But if you're that sick, you've got plenty of fat and, nutrients already inside your fat and around your belly. You can live off that for months. So don't worry about, you're going to need food. What you need right now, more than anything else, is to get whatever is caked in your gut. You probably got 40 pounds, if you're that big, 50, 60 pounds of caked matter in your gut that's got to come out. The only way to get it out is to stop putting more food on top of it and moisturize it. Maybe start off with just juices, just drinking juice, prunes, things that will loosen up and get it flowing again. Once it gets flowing, then you need to go on a no solid food diet for 40 days. That's quarantine. If you're that sick, that's what you need to do. And just about half the population in the world is that sick. They're barely dragging themselves anywhere. They're overweight. They're dying. They can't breathe. They got headaches. They're constantly sick. And they have no idea why. Well, I don't know. These cigarettes aren't doing me, it's not hurting me. I've smoked these for years. Yeah, I've eaten these potato chips for years. I just eat them once in a while. Yeah, maybe once a week or something. The next day you do donuts, right? The next day what? How about the sausages? Those little smoked sausages? Man, I used to eat those all the time. But do you realize they'll give you the diarrhea because they have MSG and they have emulsifiers in there that it's like a glue. It's chemicals that they extract from proteins and things that may sound fine, right? Well, just normal proteins we got it from. Yeah, that's like saying sugar that's normal because it comes in fruit is okay. No, it's an extracted chemical from the fruit. The fruit isn't got that white crystalline meth in there. That you had to extract that. So we're not supposed. We shouldn't be eating. One of the worst things you can do is eat that sausage. If you got to eat something like that, you can eat bacon. Bacon's not nearly as processed as that, and it's not cured like that. It doesn't have all that emulsifiers. It's just meat, salted. They use salt usually, and the smoked bacon. Get the unsmoked, right? The uncooked bacon, preferably. You don't need your bacon pre-cooked or smoked. They're using chemicals to do that. But you're eating things every day that aren't food. Every day. If you want good food, you can eat good food that is pleasing. You can make soups that are so good you'll never want to eat anything else. Paula was just making soup the other day. I made some soup tonight. It was so good. It with broccoli and rice, brown rice, organic broccoli. And, I put salt and pepper and beans, pinto beans, and it was delicious. Rice and beans and broccoli, and it was made a beautiful soup. But you see, you've got to make soup. You've got to process food in that sense by boiling. Some of these foods that we're trying to eat can't be eaten without cooking it. And like I say, even natural foods that are in wild have tannins and lectins and things that we need to process our food. So there's nothing wrong with cooking the food. As much fruit and nuts raw that you can eat, the better, because that's the diet we need to finally get to. The raw diet is the diet of raw. That's the diet that a breatharian has. That's the true diet of light. You're eating fruit, which is energy that the natural environment, our world, is sharing with you. So if you're eating any poisons and you're eating them every day, just 10% of poison in your body is going to kill you. Even if you ate 90% good food. You don't need to do that. You want cake? Go get some einkorn or spelt or emmer, some ancient grain, non-genetically modified, organic, and put an egg in it, free range, good chicken egg, a little salt, a little milk, mix that up and make a pancake. Put blueberries, bananas, put a little honey on it. Man, you got a treat. Grind up nuts and mix it with dates or figs and things like that. You can make really amazing nature bars for your hikes and so forth. You can eat lots of berries. You can take blueberries or strawberries or raspberries and freeze them or buy them frozen. Put them in a blender with a little cream, and you got yourself some ice cream. Oh, it's delicious. You can't use the excuse that you need some sweets, you need some good food, you don't like that kind of food. There's plenty of good food that's healthy for you. But you might say, yeah, but it's too expensive, I can't afford organic. Well, guys, organic nowadays, you can go to Safeway, they've got lots of organic food. It really isn't much more than maybe double the price. That's something you're going to have to decide whether your life is worth it or not. But you need to start eating foods that are not genetically modified, that is organic, that doesn't have glyphosate, which is literally Roundup. It is killing you. Smoking, any kind of smoking, you must not do it at all. Because if you damage your lungs, it will be a long time for your body, if ever, that you could repair your lung. And if your lung's not working up to par, then any air you're getting into your lungs is not being distributed in the proper amounts to your body, your brain, and your organs. And therefore, your body can't build muscle and repair itself and live long. Not only that, you're not going to feel good, and you're going to not be able to walk or play or do anything. And not only that, the lungs, when you breathe in air, that goes into your bloodstream. What you breathe out is all the poisons, the after it's burned, the carbon dioxide. Okay. Your body doesn't breathe out carbon monoxide, no, but carbon dioxide. But that carbon dioxide's got to come out of your lungs and get out of your body. So if you don't have good lungs, you can't get rid of that, and it's building up in your body, and you will die. Now, you may still have some function of your lungs. You may still have some function in your blood. So you won't die right away. You won't know it, but you're slowly dying. And your beautiful, strong legs are shriveling up and becoming thin and spindly. And you don't like the way you look. You've got blemishes. Your hair's falling out. Your nails. Look, we've all been through this. To correct all of this, we have to start getting out of the cities. It's a sin to live in the city. It's poison. You're killing your children. That's a sin. You must get far away from not just a city, but factories and pollution. You need to be hundreds of miles away from any city. Preferably, you need to be, if you're in the United States, the Rocky Mountains. I don't think it's good enough to be in Arkansas, friends. I don't think it's good enough to be in Oklahoma. There's big cities there, and there's a lot of factories and pollution in the air and in the water. Alabama, when I was there, the water stunk so bad, and the animals were all running around dying with sores all over them. It was disgusting. They were all just dying. The fish were flopping up on the shore dead. It was like a Holocaust there. And if anybody lives out there back east under those conditions, you think, oh, it's wonderful, it's beautiful. Well, it looks pretty, but you go out there and look at the water, and it's polluted in the air, and you're breathing it and you're drinking it. And if you're living anywhere over there and you're trying to get water out of the faucet, it's not just not water, it's poison. And you say, yeah, but I buy my water in a gallon jugs, where you're being contaminated. It's being contaminated by the plastic jugs. There's no way you can get water without coming out west, digging a well, drinking from a creek. You've got to have fresh air and fresh water and good organic food. Anyway, we're up to an hour now, and I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say today, but I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. The Lord will bless you. His grace and His peace will be with you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.